What if your image has squares all over it or other backgrounds? Let me show you. First of all, single layer is what you're going to choose for an image like this if you're doing a cut. If you're doing a printed cut, then you do the flat layer. But let's go to select and you get your image in here. You see all the squares? Well, even though we're going to add squares, if you change your color tolerance to 100, the squares that you add with Cricut Design Space are actually your cut areas. So you see the squares are much smaller, and these are actually turning it into what you would consider an SVG. Now, it won't save as an SVG for you to take it somewhere else, but it will act as an SVG when you're working inside of Design Space. Single layer again is what I'm choosing, and this was my usual method. You go through all the outside, but if you notice, there's some detail in this. And if it were a real school where it's more detailed with more fine lines and more maybe teeth individually, you might want to do it this way, which is my inverted way. You go select, hit 100% color tolerance. Instead of the squares, you click on the black. Look, 3 clicks and we're done. Now, 100% color tolerance helps with the lines, makes them fine, makes them easy to work with. The problem with this design is that if you notice where I'm showing you, there's gaps in every corner because the image is straight on the edge. So does it mean that you can't work it? But I'm going to show you your tip for that one. Now, even though it's inverted, when it cuts, if you leave it like this, it's going to leave it attached to the rest of the vinyl. So when you weed, it's not going to really cut the right way. So I have to close out the gaps. So this is a long way of doing it, but it's not so tedious that you can't get it done. Add a shape to every side. That's what I do. And then once you set it and make sure that you close out that gap, you're able to make it a solid image by welding. So if you notice, the first one I did was done with individually. This way, you can make sure that the gap is closed completely. I'm going to do it on all 3 sides and then weld it together, and then you're going to see how that works out. All right, so close the bottom, close the right side, and then I'm going to get in closer to the top, but I kind of rush the top, and I'm going to show you why I know this. When I go to weld it, it welds it. But when I try to contour, it actually shows that the top isn't touching the bottom, like part of the top, if that makes sense. So I'm going to undo and go closer. You see that little gap? Get closer, close at that gap, now weld it. What this will do is it'll unify it into one image. And now when you go to contour, you'll erase everything but the image you were originally wanting. So it's not too hard, but it is more steps. The other option is when you have that image, make it to where you can screenshot maybe with a border around it. That way your skull isn't touching the edges. And you can check this before you actually bring it into the design space. So here we have cleaned out the 3 clicks of the black area of the skull. Save it as single layer. Gonna save it as school. If you notice, it's already not touching the edges. That's the fastest way, but either way works. There's multiple ways to skin a cat, they say. I have never tried.